So there you go. Okay, so let's turn to this book, which all of you should have. I think you got it coming in. So Brad, you write that give first isn't altruism. And that's interesting because you think give first, okay, so it sounds so altruistic, but something even more powerful. Can you walk us through what give first means to you today and how it evolved from the early days with Len Fassler to founding Techstars?
So let me define give first, so we're working off the same language, and it's evolved from the first time I wrote about it in Startup Communities in 2012. And how many people here have read Startup Communities? A bunch? Good, cool. Hope you liked it. If you didn't like it, don't tell anyone. It has a paragraph in it called Give Before You Get. And I didn't really think that hard about the language then. That paragraph's evolved into Give First. Interestingly, about within 6 months of that book coming out, Adam Grant came out with a book called Give and Take. I don't know if people have read Adam's book. We didn't know each other then. We've become friends since. And it was very interesting because Adam defined 3 categories of people. He's a organizational psychologist, professor at Wharton. And he said there are 3 types of people. There are at one end givers, at the other end takers, in the middle there's matchers. And matchers are people who, I'll give you this if you give me that. Takers are people who are orienting from a take or a zero-sum type win-lose perspective. And givers are ones who are non-transactional from their starting point, who are looking at things from a positive sum perspective, taking a long-term view. Now, I'm putting today's words on it versus Adam's research words. These things were all sort of percolating around in my head for the last 15 years. And a lot of the experience that we had with Techstars, the positive stuff that we did, and also learning from some negative things that we did and things that didn't work, evolved to what this philosophy is today. And I define Give First very clearly as a philosophy and not a religion. A religion, you follow a set of rules and you reach salvation or nirvana or whatever your religious tradition is. We could spend a lot of time as Jews talking about how we would argue about what those rules are. That's an essential part of being Jewish. A lot of religions, it's not. These are the rules, follow the rules. Philosophy is not that. It's here's a bunch of ideas, incorporate the ideas that make sense to you into your worldview. And so with that, I'll give you the definition. The definition of Give First is being willing to put energy into a system without knowing what you're going to get back. It's not altruism. You expect to get something back, but you don't know when, from whom, over what time period, in what form, and in what magnitude. And where that came from for me with Startup Communities was this idea of if you want to get a startup community moving, you have to be willing to engage non-transactionally. You have to be willing to just put energy into the system. And if you can get everybody around the startup community putting energy into the system over time, and it might be a long period of time, but over time, things will happen. And I saw this play out in many, many different places. By the way, it's not a one-time shot. It doesn't just happen and you're done. You have to kind of keep doing it, and it's very unexpected. The tie back to the beginning, and Len Fassler, who you'll read about in the very first chapter of the book, if you read the book, it was one of 2 guys that bought my first company. They were co-chair of a company, Len Fassler and a guy named Jerry Pock, and they were partners for a long time. And I learned an enormous amount from both of them, and I had different relationships with them. With Jerry, I developed a really, fun, playful business relationship, learned a lot. With Len, it was like a whole next level of emotional engagement. And we went on after these 2 guys. I knew nothing about doing deals of any sort, buying or selling companies, investing or anything before they bought my first company. This was in the mid-90s. I did a bunch of angel investments, some with Len and Jerry, and then I started a couple of companies with Len. And one of those companies went public in 1999 and was worth about $3 billion at the peak. and went bankrupt in 2002. So sort of classic ride up and ride down of the internet cycle. Len's 32 years older than me. And the story I talk about is a moment where this really coalesced for me in about 2001. And what's happening in my world is a disaster, right? The internet bubble is deflating. It's falling apart. I'm on 25 boards. I'm on the boards of 5 companies internationally. All but one goes bankrupt. I'm on 4 public companies. If you multiply their stocks together, it's less than $1. Anybody know what that means? They were all less than $1. So $1 times less than $1 times less than $1 times less than $1 is less than $1. I mean, it was just dismal. And I'm just miserable. And I'm sitting in Len's kitchen, which is where I stayed. We had headquarters in Purchase, New York. I was in New York all the time. I was constantly flying across country, thinking like I could save all this shit that was just a mess. And I'm sure I was like this in his kitchen. Like, fuck. I mean, another day. And he comes in and he's always sort of, always cherubic, always had sort of a bounce in his step. And he looked at me and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Len, like, ugh." He said, "Brad, suit up. They can't kill you and they can't eat you." And like, he gave me a big hug and like we went off to go deal with our shit. He didn't have to be doing any of that, right? I was in my mid-30s. He was in his late 60s or maybe even early 70s by now. Like, why was he spending time with me? He was just like, that was the essence of what he was. So that's where it started.
Love it. So in the concept of give first, founders are oftentimes starved, right? Like they're just so busy. How in their very, very busy lives can they operationalize the concept of give first?
Yeah. So start with the idea that give first is not altruism, right? You're doing it for a reason. So if put yourself in a position, you're starved for time, money, energy, food, shelter, whatever, be selfish. Think of something that will help your business and approach the startup community or approach your network or approach people that you want to get access to in a way that you have as a hypothesis that it could be helpful to you. I'll give you an example that I used from startup communities, but I think is very relevant in this context. Back when BlackBerry was still a thing. See, I tied it to pretty good, right? I mean, I customize. I don't have my talking points are not all memorized. I was in. We were doing it. It must have been a Techstars thing, and there was a bunch of activities happening in Boulder. And I had a founder who said to me, "I don't have any fucking time for this." I mean, it was really cranky. "I don't have any fucking time for this shit." And I'm like, he was a friend. I'm like, come on, calm down. What do you mean? I'm too busy. I don't have time for any of this stuff. I got to run my company. If I don't, blah, blah, blah. I said, "Well, what's your biggest problem?" "Oh, that's easy." "What's your biggest problem?" We can't hire enough mobile developers. We just can't find them." I said, "Well, why don't you try an experiment? Might not work, but try this. I'm not aware in Denver or Boulder, which are connected towns, I'm not aware of a meetup on a monthly basis for mobile developers. Why don't you host a meetup at your office once a month? Just put the word out. Mobile developers. All you need is pizza, Coke, beer, doesn't matter. And just see what happens. Let's talk in 6 months." He says, "All right, I'll try that." 6 months later, we'll get together. "How's it going?" "Unbelievable." "Whoa. Unbelievable." "What do you mean unbelievable?" He says, "Every month, my office is full of the best mobile developers in Colorado. It's unreal. And we've hired some of them, but a bunch of them we don't want to hire because we got enough of them now. But we're learning from each other." And that was such a good example of like, solve your problem. Engage with the startup community, engage with your network, engage with others in a way that's not transactional. He didn't charge a membership fee. He didn't have a gatekeeper. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't have to go to somebody and say, can I do this? He just did it. And by doing it, got benefit. And I could give you, I mean, we could spend the whole time, I could give examples like that, but that's the essence of it. Just don't view it as altruism or an obligation or transactional. View it as a way of approaching a problem.
I think about it, I've spent so much time with Brad over the years, and then I think about how we've crafted Golden Ventures over the years, and there's so much that has been input into our ethos and the way that we conduct ourselves. It's so critical, and if there's one thing everyone takes away, it's like this whole notion of giving first. Like, we do a lot. We try to do a lot for the community. We don't have specific expectations around it. Very similar TechTO. I mean, incredible what they pour into the community, and then all the sponsors who show up. We have a lot of this happening, and it's so in line with everything that you've done over the years. But so shifting a little bit, so you talk about how the best mentor-mentee relationships ultimately evolve into sort of like pure relationships where the mentor becomes the mentee and vice versa. Do you have any good examples of that?
Yeah. For me personally, I mentioned Len Fassler earlier. There was some point in our relationship well before the internet bubble blew up. So still relatively early on our growth as Interline as a business, where we were at a dinner, and I can't remember what the dinner was, and he was kind of sitting a little bit away from me, and I was talking to somebody, and I kind of overheard him in the back of my ear, and he basically said something like, you would not believe how much I'm learning from working with Brad. And I mean, I heard enough of it. I turned to him, I said, Len, that's bullshit. Come on. What are you talking about? And he just looked at me and said, Brad, like, there's like this whole world of stuff I'm learning from you in the kind of things we were doing, not just the technical learning, but the style and the approach. And we were playful about it. I mean, Len was, when I first met him, he wore a tie everywhere and a jacket. And by the time we finished, he was wearing, the fanciest Len would be like you, with like a t-shirt. I even got rid of his button-down shirts at some point, but he still wore his jacket over it. Right. But the seriousness of that was not emulating each other. It was learning from each other, and that sort of back and forth. Another example, which is another one in the book that you'll get. Now, I won't give you the richness of it. My uncle Charlie, who's my dad's younger brother, a couple of years younger than my brother, they're very close. My younger brother and I are very close. And then Charlie has two sons who are very close. And the four sons, my brother and the two of them, are close. So good, small family, good, really tight relationships. I started my business in 1987. And I started college in 1983. And like between late 70s and mid 80s, Charlie would regularly take me. He was he essentially invented the category that we call today Chief Information Officer. I think his title in the 70s was Manager of Data Processing or something like that at Frito-Lay. And he had a big job. He was very innovative. What's attributed to him is the very first handheld computer being used in business. So the Frito-Lay truck drivers had a handheld computer that did inventory and everything. I don't know if I should be closer. Oh, I should be closer. That's the problem. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop. Okay. So, he invented the handheld computer essentially in an enterprise setting. And he would just drag me to these meetings with these big tech companies that I had no business being in. I went to school in Boston. He'd take me to Lotus Development Corp when he'd have meetings with Jim Manzi and the executives at Lotus Development. And I'm just a college kid. I started my business in 87. He started a company in 92. And both companies were very creatively named. Mine was named Feld Technologies. His was named the Feld Group. So we were not creative people. But all of a sudden, I was playing a peer mentor role with him because he was calling me and asking me questions about things to do around his business getting started and how to think about things and what I was doing. So these relationships evolve. And I think about the thousands of founders that we've funded at Techstars, many of those founders that I still have relationships with, or that I developed relationships with, I've learned way more from them, I think, than they learned from me. So the magic of a mentor-mentee relationship is that it's not a hierarchical one-up, one-down relationship. You really want the relationship to be a peer-to-peer. And I know a lot of people, and I run into this a lot. I'm 23 years old. I don't know anything. What do I have to add? Da, 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 da. And my response is wrong. You're wrong. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that you see through your eyes that I can, as a 60-year-old, learn from. Help me. I'm game. I'm game to put energy into you if you're game to put energy into me. Some of my best relationships now, I'll just name two and then we'll go to the next question. One of them is with a guy named Sam Ritchie. Sam's in his mid-30s now, and he's a founder of a new company. His dad was one of my best friends. It's still around, so still a good friend. But I'm way closer to Sam than his dad. My nickname from Sam is Scary Man, because I look like that. But the essence of the relationship, how many people here are technical and know the book Kernighan and Ritchie that has a C on it, the white book with the C on it? So Dennis Ritchie is my friend Bill's brother. Bill is not a software developer. Dennis Ritchie is a legend. He passed a number of years ago, but he invented C and Unix. Sam is his genetic, or intellectual spirit. So that quality software developer. And so as I'm, one of my hobbies now is writing software again. I hadn't written software commercially since early 90s. Vibe coding makes it easy for a knucklehead like me to write software again. If you like Asteroids, the video game, Dinostroids, check it out. It works on mobile and desktop, and it's free. And I even have a right to use license from Atari because they saw it and they were disturbed by it enough to want me to sign a license. But the relationship with Sam is one where it goes both ways, right? My partner, Ryan McIntyre's son, Quinn, who I've known since the day he was born, is now in his early 20s, deeply, deeply engaged in a whole bunch of stuff around startups. He's been running a thing called Prod, of which, if you know Cursor, Mercor, a couple of other companies have come out of Prod, which is a student-run program at Stanford, Harvard, Technion now, and MIT. And like, the amount I learned from Quinn is amazing. So this idea that it's a hierarchical dynamic is just false, and you want to get to this place where you're both learning from each other.
That's great. So you also write about the 5 whys and the need to guide rather than control, right? A lot about questions as opposed to giving answers. And that's very, very relevant as an investor, as a board member, as a mentor, all across the board. What's the most surprising turnaround story you've seen as a result of asking better questions, not giving better answers?
I don't think I have an absolute. I have so many.
Yeah.
And I won't use, there's one in the book that we use to illustrate this chapter, which is simple energy story. So when you run into the simple energy story, think of this. I won't use that one. I'll make a slightly different point. How many people don't know what 5 whys is? Okay, most people do. Cool. So you will hear a thing that's said a lot called thinking from first principles. The vast majority of people who say they're thinking from first principles are full of shit. What it means is that you're able to think about a problem from start and work your way forward through the problem. I know almost no one that can do that because you have all of your historical biases, no matter how you're trying to deal with that problem. So I think 5 whys is way more effective. What 5 whys is when you are confronted with a problem, you ask a series of questions that are reductionist to try to get to the root cause of the problem. So for me, like whenever somebody says, well, let's talk about first principles. My first principle is blah. I'm like, well, why? And it's amazing the number of times that that's actually not the first principle as you get deeper into what's actually going on. So for me, in the context of turnarounds or things that, are messed up where you're trying to understand what's happening, the important thing as if you're in a room is to recognize what your role in the room is. And I think this is a place where VCs and founders and operators get very confused, especially in the boardroom, but generally speaking, right? The CEO runs the company. If you're an investor and or a board member and you're not happy with how the CEO is running the company, it's your job to do something about it, which does not necessarily mean replace the CEO. It means address what the issue is and see if you can make progress. I like to say, as long as I support the CEO, I work for her. And the day that I don't support the CEO, my job is to do something about it to try to get back to a place where I support her. And ultimately, if I can't get there, as a board member or major investor, I can make a CEO change, or I can't usually do it unilaterally, but I can affect that dynamic. So it comes back to this notion of what's your role. The CEO is the one who is running the thing. The people in the room are trying to help the CEO figure out what's gone wrong and what needs to happen and what needs to change. If any of you have ever managed a team, if you say to the team, I need this done this way by this date, you're almost guaranteed not to get it. Right? And then, there's a cliche, you get to do 2 of the 3, like, do you want it fast? Do you want it on time? Do you want it high quality? But if you're a really great manager, you get the team to tell you what they're going to do over what period of time and what level, right? So you elicit it from them rather than dictate it to them. In the context of things that turn around, when you're under stress, something's just not working, people automatically shift into whatever their natural defense mechanisms is or are, and they tend not to be consistent, right? Whatever Matt's defense mechanisms are going to be different than mine, different than Alex, on and on and on. And so understanding what yours are and then engaging with the problem that way, where you're trying to guide towards an answer, is what's so key. And it's not relationship advice. I mean, you can apply it to that too. But in the context of business, like, think about the problem, and instead of solve, okay, let's do that. Step back and start, well, what is the problem? Is this really the problem? Is the problem that the microphones don't really work? Is the problem that I get it.
It's a great way to diffuse by asking those questions, taking the emotion.
We've experienced that together.
Sure.
When we're on a board together, and you can see, like, you got 7 or 8 people in the room, and you can see, if you're watching the room and participating at the same time, you can see that person over there they're fucked up. Like, they are not, their head is not in this thing. And you can just see by looking at him and watching him. If you're not looking at him, you can't tell. So many people in the room are engaging with everybody else in the room with their eyes closed.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. So let's switch over a bit to Techstars, which is known as a mentorship-driven accelerator. But mentorship has really become a buzzword, right? And so how do you spot the real thing versus sort of value-added vaporware?
Yeah, so in this book, I tried hard to combine 2 concepts. One was my philosophy. I just want to make sure everybody's hearing okay. I feel like I have, okay, good. I wanted to combine this philosophy of give first with the concept of effective mentorship. I didn't want it to be a rule-following experience or religion. I want it to be a philosophy. And so we used the Techstars Mentor Manifesto, which David Cohen came up with in 2010. It's 18 bullet points. They're not particularly grammatically well written, as Grammarly told me over and over again as I edited this book. But I tried really hard not to change them, tried to use them in their true form to the best of my ability without clicking on that thing and changing it from a red squiggly to not red squiggly. And of those, it's really interesting as I work through this book, so many of the things that in 2006, when we started Techstars, we had no idea what mentorship meant. And neither did anybody else, really. The word wasn't used very much. Sometimes there was this notion of it in big corporations, and also sort of was linked to this idea of pay it forward, which was very transactional. The language was you have a mentor in investment banking, you had a rabbi, somebody that helped you work your way up the hierarchy. And that's not mentorship. There's nothing to do with it. And so we were trying to invent this as we went. Interestingly, by about 2010, 3 or 4 years in, we learned a bunch of things that didn't work, as well as a bunch of things that did work. And one of the real phenomena that has been interesting to me is the challenge that I think people face between feeling like they have to have the answer and understanding that the work of many of the people in this room is having a hypothesis, running an experiment, most of the time having the experiment fail, creating a new hypothesis, running another experiment based on what you've learned, having that fail, but learn some more, run another experiment. Oh, that experiment worked. Let's do more of that. And then that works for a while until one day it doesn't. And then you have to modify and learn. Like, that's what entrepreneurship is. It's really frustrating at one level. And at another level, it's very liberating. If you sort of look at it and say, all right, well, I'm just going to run a whole bunch of experiments. And when they work, I'm going to do more of it. If you're a mentor and you're engaging with the person running those experiments, the founder, you have to engage in a very different way than, oh, you should do this, or you should do that, or here's the answer, or this is what I think. I learned this very early on in my own experience as a founder, because I was part of an organization called Young Entrepreneurs Organization. I don't know if people here know YEO or EO. Couple, and some people know YPO probably. They both have a construct called forum. And forum is once a month, 3 hours with the same group of people. That's your forum group. It's usually about 10 people. And the way forum works is you do go around the room and you all do a personal update and a professional update. But then one person presents, and they present, and everybody just listens. Sit and you listen. At the end of the presentation, each person asks questions. And you don't go around the room and ask questions, you just ask questions. But that's it. You're not allowed to answer questions. You're not allowed to make suggestions. You're not allowed to make comments. You just ask clarifying questions for an hour, 30 minutes, whatever it is. And then at the end of that, everyone goes around the room and gets now to say something that's relevant to the problem from their experience. So the language is from my experience, blah, 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 blah. The person who is the presenter comes out of that with ownership over what they do, right? They have real agency around their own decision making. And what their peers just helped them do was guide them to think more richly or robustly about the problem, maybe solve it, maybe not. And that happened to me when I was in my 20s. And it was such a different way of engaging than how you engage in school, how you engage with a customer, how you engage with your parents, how you have an argument with, it's just different. And mentors have to engage in that, not the equivalent way, but a similar kind of way. You're not trying to say, here's the answer. You're saying, from my experience, here's some data. Have you thought about this? However, it has to have a purpose. How many of you have ever been in a boardroom meeting with, the person who's in a power position and all they do is ask you questions, but you have absolutely no idea where any of that shit's going? Right? I have many times. I've been sitting in the room like, will you get to the fucking point? Like, what exactly? And well, here's question number 17. And not just in an interview context. You get what I'm saying. It has to have a path. You have to be guiding somewhere. So I'm giving examples sort of at a high level of what effective mentorship is. And what was really interesting to me, powerful to me as I was writing this book, when I wrote the first draft of it, I did not do a good job of linking together the concept and the philosophy of give first and the construct of mentorship. And it was almost like there's a book that just came out called Mobius that I just bought because it's such a clever book. The front of the book is thing, and you flip it over 180 degrees and you read it backwards, forward, the other way. I haven't read it yet. It's sitting on my table, but probably everybody's run into a book like that. That's like two books jammed together. That's what I had done. And as I stepped back and tried to interweave these two concepts together, I realized how reflective so much of this was. So much of the power of this philosophy of putting energy into things without knowing where they're going is congruent with the idea of mentorship, where you're guiding somebody rather than trying to control the outcome, trying to tell them what to do.
I think that's super interesting. Lots of food for thought. It kind of, my son finished school. He's now later teenager, and was holding a bottle, a clear plastic bottle, and it clearly had alcohol in it. And my answer was, in my experience, if you drink that, you will vomit. So,
that's a lot more effective than saying don't drink that, right? You're like, and you know what? You say, look, it's up to you if you want to drink that.
It's up to you.
And if you have that experience, your choice.
You got to learn at some point. So he probably did, and he was fine. So anyway, but okay, let's shift over here to some rapid fire. I always like a little rapid fire when I have Brad. It's very difficult because rapid and Brad's
all my
very rarely.
You'll read this in the book if you read it. All my stories are 20% too long. That's totally genetic. I got that from my father. And now I've gotten better. His stories are all like 50% too long. So at least I'm only 20% too long.
All right. Well, let's try. Okay. Ready?
Promise.
Most overused word in venture.
Well, today the word would be AI. But that's so easy.
So easy, right?
I think there are there's a lot of phrases in venture that are nonsense and that are used when you hear them. I have a filter. When I hear somebody say, I'm a adjective noun, I immediately put the word not before adjective. So here's a good example. I'm a value-added VC. Nobody's ever heard that phrase before. And my view is when somebody says that, they should just put the word not. I'm not a value-added VC. So for me, anytime somebody's asserting what they are is a tell to be careful. Not 100%, because everybody has their own, our own ways of speaking. But it's interesting, especially in the context of venture capital, if people are asserting what they or their firms are, it's worth a pause and actually decide whether they're truthful or not. And if they are, and they're just repeating what is clear reputation, that's fine. But if they're not, is that somebody that you relish the relationship with? Founder friendly is sort of a classic one where it went from being a thing that only a few people said, like Josh Koppelman, who really truly was founder friendly, to all of a sudden every VC everywhere is founder friendly. And they are all founder friendly as long as your business is doing great and making them a shit ton of money. And the second it's not, they're, that is business. And it's like,
There's business, yeah. I always hated founder friendly as a concept. To me, founder aligned made a lot more sense.
Look,
right?
I own
like
part of,
alignment.
You're the founder. I own part of your business. We're partners.
We're trying to achieve something together.
That's different than
we're here to help you achieve that, right?
I'll let you have anything you want.
Yeah.
It's cool. Oh, wait a second. Things aren't working. Goodbye. And then you say, well, you were founder friendly and you signed this really dumbass agreement that says, and Will did a really good job protecting me. It says you have no voting rights, Mr. Investor.
All right. So next one. So that was quick. Okay. Underrated founder trait. Most underrated founder trait.
I'm going to give two. One is humor. I really enjoy founders who have a sense of humor, even when they're taking themselves seriously and like are trying to get something done, but have a playfulness about this comedy called life that we all live. And it's particularly true when things go sideways, because they always do. And the idea of being able to look at it and say, all right, this is what today is. Right?
There's a humility to that.
Yeah.
Right?
I have a post I wrote a long time ago. I was having a really shitty day. And the post is, something new is fucked up in my world every day. But the key phrase was new. And my line was like, if it's 4:00 in the afternoon and it hasn't revealed itself yet, I'm kind of curious what it's going to be.
That's good. I like that. Okay. Ready? Next one. Worst boardroom habit.
Well, can I use the one I used earlier today?
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, I like that.
Clipping your fingernails during a board meeting. Anybody have that experience? I have. I've had somebody in the boardroom clip their fingernails.
At least it wasn't their toenails.
No, that probably be better, because then they'd have to be like crumpled under the desk doing their toenails. Look, the Mr. Smarty Pants or Mrs. Smarty Pants makes me crazy. Everybody in that room is smart, and they're smart on different things and have different strengths and weaknesses and different skills. But the person who acts as Mr. and Mrs. Smarty Pants, who I think everybody knows I'm talking about, it's fucking insufferable.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, okay, I get it, but back off. And it's also, in the context of being effective, in a lot of cases, while people think they're effective when they're behaving that way, they're very much not effective, especially in a boardroom, especially when things are challenging. It's a difficult decision.
Yeah, agreed. Biggest misconception about VCs?
This is easy, is that VCs are a singular archetype. VCs, I described many years ago, probably 15 years ago, are simply different Dungeons and Dragons characters. Or if you're younger, Magic the Gathering characters. Or what's the cool game that everybody plays today? One of those game characters. Like, they've got different strengths, skill levels, experience. They're just different. And so the idea of thinking of a VC as a singular archetype is a huge mistake. Now, there's a lot more VCs today than there were 20 years ago. And there's a lot of VCs who try to emulate other VCs. And that's even more of a problem on the VC side, because I think the best VCs are their own people versus trying to emulate somebody else. The other misconception is that VC firms are anything other than a collection of random Dungeons and Dragons characters. The VC firm may have cultural norms, may have values, may have ways of being, and every business does, but the individual VCs are still different. And they have different pressures, and they behave in different ways, and they have different value systems, and they act and react to their pressures in different things. So this notion that VC is a thing, it's just people.
How are we doing for time? Just quick check. Good. Okay. I've got
Ruth commands us to move to Q&A.
I've got one more before. One more rapid fire.
One more 7-minute answer.
This is a tough one. City with the next breakout tech ecosystem.
Toronto?
Yeah. Mic drop. Thanks. Yeah, don't be shy. Anything. Let's go.
Make younger people listen to you in terms of the upcoming multi-generational, slowly growing perspective. How do you break in?
How do you get younger people to listen to me? I love the question, because my answer is I don't know. Kids today. Now, I used to be that kid. Like, there was a moment in time where I was the youngest kid in the room. Now I'm often one of the oldest people in the room. It's very weird. I think that the approach I've taken, which I will link to mentoring, and I think about people like I mentioned Sam or Quinn, I try not to tell them things to do. I try to have a sort of conversation with them around whatever it is that's interesting to me. So again, guide, not control. I was thinking of a very specific thing with Quinn. This is Ryan McIntyre's son, who's in his early 20s. We're talking about a very specific thing. And, I know his parents really well. We're really close friends. And I know his parents were holding themselves, one of his parents was holding herself back from like saying, do this. And Ryan is never going to tell Quinn to do this, but he's looking to Ryan for approval. And the mother's like holding back. Like Catherine's like, I want to tell him to do this, but I know that if I tell him, he's going to do the other thing. And so we're having a conversation. And I said to him, look, here are the two different things that you could do. I don't care which one you do. Like, it doesn't matter to me at all. Well, let's talk about what each one is. And let's talk about what the implications are and what they mean and what you're worried about and what you're thinking of. And like, it was that kind of a thing. Now, I could do that. I wasn't a parent. I think it's much harder for a parent to engage that way with someone. But I think that's a good tool, which is to say, look, and it's part of the mentor concept. It's just data. Like if I say, here are the here's some ideas for you, but you know what? If you ignore all of them and do something totally different, if you are successful, awesome. And if you fail, I'm not going to say what my mother says to me when I fail. I told you so. But what I'm going to say is, what did we learn from that? And what are we going to do differently? What are we going to take from it to try to do differently? So I think it's very aligned with some of the ideas here. It's a provocative question. It's good.
I think like I've been so I have two teenagers, and I'm so pleasantly surprised by not just my kids, but this notion of kids today is always like this concept that every parent can't believe kids today, right? And so I've been pleasantly surprised by this generation that they're a lot more resilient, and I think maybe it may have been going through something like COVID. They've been through it, and they are more resilient. And things didn't go perfectly well for them, and they deserve a lot of credit. And I think the approach of being open and giving them options and so on. So far, I've been pleasantly surprised. Until right. I mean, you're always waiting for the shoe to drop. But hopefully that remains. And I'm not just talking about my kids, but their friends and the extended friend groups. And that's great news.
So I don't know if Vincent is here. If he's here, I hope I don't embarrass him. And if he's not here, then we're talking behind his back, which is fun. Vincent works for Golden. And we were in the Golden office just before, and he and I were talking. He had a couple questions for me, and we were talking about something. And he presented as an assertion something which was totally rational. I think very hard to achieve based on the parameters that he gave. And I asked the question, I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the effect of, is that what the environment that you're in, is that the requirement of what is going on? Is that what Matt and Amish think is, are you aligned? And he basically said, well, no, not really. It's like what I'm making up in my head about what's important. And I could have said a different approach. I could have said, well, that's not going to work. You shouldn't try to do that. You should do a different thing. Or I could have said, well, that sounds great. Go for it. Right. But it was more like step back from it and just say, that doesn't sound quite right. And so let's talk about that. I think one of the things that's really challenging, it's true in mentorship. I think it's true in the boardroom. I think it's true in conflict situations. We move very quickly to the answer because we want to resolve the issue. And sometimes that's good, but most of the time, if you move quickly to an answer without actually interrogating the issue, you don't get there. There's another part of this, which I think comes up in relationships. It's interesting to play with, and I talk about it pretty extensively, which is the idea of passive avoidance versus active avoidance. As I was writing this book, I was thinking about all of the things I regretted in my professional experience, including ones with Techstars, my partners at Foundry, things that I regretted. It was not the things that failed. It was when I was being passively avoidant, when I knew that there was an issue and I just didn't address it. And I separated that from active avoidance, which is there's an issue and I'm just not going to do anything about it. There's an issue and you know what? You got to go work on your issue. I'm not going to fix your problem for you. Or, yep, that's a really fucked up thing. And I'm okay with that. And I'm just going to live with it. That's different than, I'm not going to acknowledge it. I'm going to avoid it. I'm not going to pay. Almost all of the things that I regret in the last 40 years of business come from passive avoidance.
Tackle it. When you see it, tackle it. Figure out the right way and tackle
Or declare that you're not going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Again, and separate from failure. Because I've failed.
Yeah.
I've succeeded at a bunch of stuff. I've failed at a bunch of stuff. I've grabbed, what's the cliche? I've grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory. It's how it goes. I don't regret those things. That's just part of the life experience. I regret when I saw a thing and I knew I should either say, I'm not going to do something about that, or I'm going to do something about it. And I didn't do either of those things.
Cool. Next question. You want to just get up so they can see you?
So curious on thoughts around coaching versus mentoring versus managing, and what kind of your compass is on when to employ which.
Yeah. So let me use my definitions because I think having definitions on coaching is important. I'm going to separate between therapy, coaching, advising, and mentoring. Therapy is when you have a licensed professional give you psychology or psychiatry and have a relationship that's based on exploration of you in that therapeutic context. That is different than coaching. Although lots of people say, well, coaching is a substitute for therapy. It's not. They are totally different things. So with that out of the way, coaching is an opportunity to work with somebody, hopefully, that understands how to be a coach, to learn more about yourself and your strengths and weaknesses in a professional context. Some of it can blend over into a personal context because most of the things that bother you or trouble you in a professional context often have a linkage to your own personal stuff. Jerry Colonna, who is an extremely close friend of mine. If you're not familiar with Jerry, I recommend a book of his called Reboot, The Art of Leadership and Growing Up. It's a tremendous book. And Jerry talks about in that book a concept that's pretty well understood called our shadow self. Right, we all have a shadow self. I like to talk about my alter egos. I have some good alter egos and I have some bad alter egos, but it's your behavior and reaction to your shadow self rather than your true self. A coach can engage with you and work through that so you can actually understand what those things are and modify your behavior, deal with the things that you're afraid of and how you're reacting to other people. Again, very different than therapy. An advisor is somebody, and you pay a coach. And it's a consistent, controlled relationship. An advisor, you pay them to do a job. And that job could be very well prescribed, meet with you once a month to do this, that, or the other thing, or to help you with this activity. But it's very much a transactional relationship around a set of tasks. There's a lot of room for it in the context of everything that everybody's doing, but it's different again than mentorship. Where mentorship is somebody who's willing to engage with you in a give first way. They're willing to put energy into you, into what you're working on without knowing what they're going to get back. But again, it's not altruism. They expect to get something back. And that mentorship relationship can evolve into plenty of things. It can evolve into an investor relationship. It can evolve into a board member relationship. It can evolve into a co-founder relationship. But it very rarely evolves into a coaching relationship. Sometimes it does evolve into an advisor type relationship. Those things can overlap, but they're really distinct functions. And I think one of the things that I've tried to do some with this book, but I've also tried to, in some of my other writing, separate these things. It's not that one is better than the other. There's no judgment about mentor is better than advisor or vice versa, but they're different. And I'll tell a quick story. After I sold my first company, I was one of the first people in Boston in the 1990s in my sort of, 20-year-olds, people between post-college and 30 that had sold their business. And there was a group of us now, and it was the very beginning of the commercial internet. And so I took some of the money that I'd made and I started making investments, but I had a bunch of people that just wanted me to spend time with them. And so I came up with, all right, you pay me $1,000 a month, I'll do this. $3,000 a month, I'll do this. $5,000 a month, I'll do this. And they were reasonably well defined what this is, and I won't belabor the story because part of it's in the book. And all of a sudden, I had a lot of demand. People wanted me to spend time with them, and I was making a decent amount of money. And they gave me stock options also for this kind of help. And again, in some cases, I invested in the companies. But all of a sudden, the people who were paying me $1,000 a month were getting unhappy with me because I wasn't giving them the service that the $3,000 a month people were getting. And the $3,000 a month people were really annoyed that even though I said I'd always be responsive to their phone calls, that I wasn't calling them back on Saturday afternoon at 3:30. This is back in the 1990s when we didn't have cell phones, so I had to go listen to my answering machine and see if they called. You get the idea. And I was putting the invoices together at the end of one month, and I just decided to fire all of them. I'm like, I'm done with this. I don't want the money. And I basically said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'll continue to help. I'll continue to be responsive. And I said to all of them, if you want your stock back, take your stock back. I'm not happy. I got too many other things to do and I'm investing and da-da-da. And all of them, almost all of them understood. None of them asked for their stock back. And the dynamic was interesting because it created this liberation from other people have a hold on my time to I have control over where I put my time. And that's another difference between a mentor and an advisor. A mentor's not obligatory. Someone doesn't have a hold on your time. But an advisor, somebody has a hold on your time. Will, who did a great job, when I emailed Will, if he didn't respond in 4 minutes, he felt uncomfortable. When he saw the email, I was like, oh shit, I didn't respond in 4 minutes. Brad must be angry. Well, most of the time it didn't matter. But the serious comment was there's a relationship there that's a transactional relationship that is different than that mentor dynamic.
Thank you, Brad and Matt, for the insightful and uplifting session. My question relates to the mentee relationship, and you touched on this with a distinction between therapy, coaching, mentorship, and advisory. How much emphasis do you put on things like personal development when you're working with people? And by that, I mean developing skills like courage or emotional resilience or understanding your values, or even things like better time management or emotional awareness as a preamble to all the other things that they need to do that may be more technical or specific.
I'll answer it from my frame of reference. Even as an investor, so separate from being a mentor, I try pretty hard to show up where the other person is versus where I want them to be. And I'm pretty good at describing myself in that context too. So when somebody works with me that's new to working with me, I say, look, think of me as a really undisciplined, extremely high functional sales hunter. I'm that archetype. People tend to know what that is. It's a person who's kind of a lone wolf personality. They don't really manage a team. They kind of do stuff on their own. They don't really want to keep track of stuff. They're kind of like Pigpen in Charlie Brown. There's always lots of dust being kicked up over wherever they're going. It's a little chaotic. And, if you want me to be part of a process, good luck. But if you have what your sort of dynamics are, I'll try to show up for that. And so, I do, for example, have CEOs who say, can we have a weekly call? I have one partner who does a weekly call every week with every CEO. And I say to CEOs, please don't do that to me. I hate that. Will you just call me when you need me or just text me? I'll call you right back. And if I can't call you right back, I'll text you when I can call you right back. Really, can we schedule on Tuesday at 2:30? I'm like, it's just going to crush my spirits. I don't want to do that. And so, with the exception of some boundaries, I try to meet the other person where they are. And what's been interesting in mentoring situations around personal development, most of the things that in the last, I'm interested in Matt's response. He says, I've been a good mentor. I have no idea what I've done that's been helpful as a mentor. So like flip it around in the context of like, did I meet you where you were in moments where you were needed? Does that ring true to you around specific issues when you called, even if I didn't have lots of context about what was happening or we hadn't had a lot of engagement? Like that's what I've tried to do versus, hey, if you want to be a more effective CEO, here's a set, or a more effective VC, here's a set of things to do.
I think mentor-mentee, as you said, is a two-way relationship. And as a mentee, you have an obligation to contextualize what you're looking for. It's not an open-ended ask, right? It's you understand that it's that person is giving you the gift of their time, their energy, their experience. And so I think I'm trying to think back, but in the context of our relationship, I think I probably called you 3 or 4 times, like in that context, but it was at critical times where I really needed support or advice. And I was able within probably 3 to 4 minutes to just set it up. And then I would get exactly the advice I was looking for. Right. So, but it is a two-way street. And so you were an amazing mentor to me. And I think it wasn't a huge time commitment, but it also developed that friendship, that mentor-mentee relationship.
Well, I think back to professional development and just think about our own relationship. Like it's at these moments in time that are powerful. And, I love the Warren Buffett cliche because it's so true. Reputation is built over a lifetime and destroyed in a minute. And we see this in the tech community all the time. Like, just think carefully about people who you used to respect, who have had huge accomplishments, might be incredibly successful, financially powerful people. And you look at them, you're like, what the fuck? Like, what? I don't get that. It happens all the time. And, there's lots of different dimensions that it happens on. It's not just in tech, it's in all of life. I think those moments where somebody reaches out and you have a peer relationship or a mentor-mentee relationship, whatever it is, and the person says, I need some help. I need some advice in this moment. Being fully present for them in that moment is so much more powerful professional development than you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should get better at that. Because most of the time, and some of this is what I said earlier, Jerry, shadow self, most of the time, the thing that's directly in front of the person when they're having some crisis is not the thing, right? It's something, but it's not the thing. And it doesn't mean that if you can remove it from your face, the problem's solved, but it allows you to see more clearly what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's really well put.
Yeah. We have a lot of questions, but I want to make sure we have some time to network. So you guys gonna be able to stay around for a bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So before
I'm here till 6:15.
I think
6:14.
I think they want us out by 6, but
I'm here till 5:59.
at 6 we'll be
See,
out
I'm
in
very,
front.
I'm very mailable. I'm
Very
just like
good.
Charles. I'm just like Pigpen. Like, it's cool. I can change.
So can we get a round of applause? Thank you guys.
Can I do one thing before we mingle?
Yes.
I just did this at Camp Golden and it was really fun. I'm just starting the book tour. And this was the first I did some stuff in Colorado when I was there before the book came out. It just came out yesterday. So it's early. A couple of requests. One, if you like the book, make noise about it. The internet's love to see people in books, pictures. Amazon, if you like Amazon, or Goodreads, love your reviews. All those things are additive. So, like my ask is that. If you don't like the book, throw it away and don't tell anybody.